October meeting of the Town of Abingdon Planning Commission meeting to order. Welcome to the Town of Abingdon, Virginia Planning Commission regular meeting. We appreciate your interest and we encourage public participation in our meeting. Your comments are important to our decision-making process. There will be two opportunities to address the commission. The first will come at the first part of the meeting when we ask for comment on items not on the agenda. Second will come when there's a public hearing. Public hearing will be open and people who wish to address the commission can address the commission at that time. Anybody addressing the commission will approach the podium, give your first and last name and your complete physical address. Comments should be limited to 3 minutes. Roll call.
Mr. Austin, Mr. Johnson,
Here.
Mr. Weaver,
Here.
Mr. Pennington,
Here.
Mr. Sproles,
Here.
Mr. Wilson, and Mr. Schuman.
Here. All right, next order of business is approval of the minutes of the regular meeting September 26, 2023. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? If not, is there a motion that the minutes be approved as submitted?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any additional discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any noes? Anybody opposed? All right. Next order of business is public comment for items not on the agenda. Is anybody signed up to speak? If not, is there anybody who wishes to address the commission for items not on the agenda? All right. It will move on. The next order of business is special use permit, Matthew Bundy, 227 Stone Mill Road, Abingdon, Virginia, 24210. Applicant special use permit for accessory dwelling located at 227 Stone Mill Road, Abingdon, Virginia, 24210. Tax map 018-7-3. Staff report.
We'll do a little staff report first, but
Yeah.
you sit down or stand up here, however you'd like to handle it. So the item that is before you tonight is for property located at 227 Stone Mill Road. The property is within the R3 district and it requires a special use permit because they were asking to exceed the limit in area for an accessory dwelling unit. So as you all remember this last year when we updated our zoning code, we essentially allowed accessory dwelling units pretty much on every parcel in town. The goal of that is for affordable housing and to ensure that we would have the ability to have family members living in dwellings and those types of things. So the main structure on this property is going to be and continues to be a single-family dwelling. The second structure in the back is actually a shed storage area and will be added onto. So in section 7-2-2, accessory dwelling units have a maximum square foot of 800 square feet, and that's for the finished floor area. If people wish to have larger structures, because we know that some people's parcels are larger, they're allowed to come through a special use permit process, and you all can recommend approval or denial to the town council. This applicant is proposing to exceed the 800 square feet by only 185 additional square feet. So they're looking for a total building area of 985 square feet of livable area. The applicant will tell you more, but the primary reason is additional space to provide ADA accessibility for a future retirement location. So with that, I'll turn it over to the applicant.
Great. Good afternoon. How are you? Well, that's not much more to say to that.
Sir, we need for you to give your first and last name and your complete physical address.
Okay.
Please.
My name is Nestor Robles. I work for Bundy A&E at 190 East Main Street in Abingdon, Virginia.
Okay.
So again, there's not much more to say to that. The existing shed house is only again, 360 square feet. We have designed the space for the client, which includes, again, bedroom, bathroom, which is handicap accessible. The added addition will be for a living room, small living room dining, and an outside patio space, which they'll be using in all season and all year round. We are trying to somewhat keep the vernacular of the building, although we cannot address the existing log home. The existing shed that is there is a log shed, which we really, the structural stability of it, we will try to make better. And we are going to be adding a basically board and batten addition to that to match somewhat as best as we can the existing vernacular of the building. This building cannot really be seen from the street. It's only going to be accessible from one entry, which is the driveway, and it is only for the use of the existing homeowners which live in the house. They are foreseeing their medical conditions for the future, and they would like to use this as a main entry, not having to go up any steps, which the existing house has. So they would like to make this existing structure as accessible as possible.
All right. Questions? Comments? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Since this is a special use permit, it does require a public hearing. So I'm going to open the public hearing at this time, see if there's anybody who wishes to speak. Is there anybody who wishes to address this from the public? Maybe if you want to.
Actually, Mary Herman, she's actually one of the owners of the property.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, you're welcome to speak.
I just foresee taking care of my husband.
we need-
Oh, Mary Herman, 227 Stone Mill Road, in Everett, thank you. It's going to be very difficult in my primary home. It's got 3 flights of stairs. The laundry room's in the basement. The kitchen's only 3 feet wide, and for ADA access, you need it to be 5 feet wide. So I just feel that we're better suited back behind our primary home.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak to the public hearing? If not, I'm going to close the public hearing. Comments from anybody on the commission? If not, is there a motion regarding acceptance of the, or approval of the special use permit?
Mr. Chairman, this is in my neighborhood, and I don't have any issues with approving this, and I don't know everyone in the community, but the ones I do know, I don't think they would object. So I would move that we approve the special use permit as presented.
Is there a second?
Question, I guess our thought process behind this is that we're not overbuilding and extending into other property lines and
Correct.
encroaching. That does not appear to be the case in terms of the
Yeah.
size of the lot and, like you said, access and those things. We're not talking about anything there that presents any issues that you're aware of.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll second.
Okay. Any additional discussion? If not, would you call the roll?
Sure. Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Weaver?
Aye.
Mr. Pennington?
Aye.
Mr. Sproles?
Aye.
And Mr. Schuman?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And the only thing I was just gonna add is that if there were additional, like if it was in a setback or something of that nature, it would actually go to the BZA and have to go through a
Okay.
variance
Oh, right,
process.
okay.
So in the future, since this is our first one that we've done like this, we can provide all that information to you as well.
Perfect.
Next order of business is certificate of appropriateness. Larry R. Jones, 266 West Main Street, Abingdon, Virginia, 24210. Certificate of appropriateness for exterior changes located at 266 West Main Street, Abingdon, Virginia, 24210. Tax map 011-8-4. Staff report.
Gilbert Christopher, Town of Abingdon. So yes, Larry Jones, the applicant / owner, has requested approval of an entrance corridor certificate of appropriateness for changing the existing exterior paint scheme and replacing the finished existing crimped standing seam awning roof. This is located at 266 West Main Street. So Some background, the property was purchased in 1937 by E.W. Rambo, where a one-story brick structure was built. The Louis Stretchy Furniture Company moved into the structure in 1937. Hugh L. Sweet and Charles E. Sweet, father and son, owned and operated the business up until 1990. And currently, the structure operates as the Glass Peacock and assorted other retail businesses. As you can see in your packet, I supplied a historic photograph that we found in Places in Time by Nancy C. King, and it's just showing the primary facade of the structure. So you can see the awning roof. It's pretty much been unchanged from this time to presently. Some staff findings. As I said, the applicant proposes to alter the existing paint scheme of the primary elevation or north elevation of the finished masonry structure, currently painted black. The primary paint color will be blue peacock with an accent color of really teal. The trim and awning roof color will be painted copper penny. The existing crimped tin standing seam roof is finished, so the paint scheme for the roof is pretty much the exact same as the existing. It's like an orange copper color. The applicant proposes to replace the existing crimped tin standing seam awning roof with a new standing seam metal roof. The color will be copper penny, the same color as the trim. So that's pretty much what we had in the packet. Now, the applicant did contact me earlier today and said they do plan on also changing the awnings on the back of the structure. If we can go down. And it'd be the same thing, standing seam. But so they have, based on conversation, it's this one, correct, Larry?
That's
One of them? Okay. So this one's got, it's wood frame that has asphalt shingles on it. And then there's a second one that's a little lower, that's just, it looks like somebody formed just a piece of metal over it and welded it together. So they're just looking to replace these two as well with standing seam as the front is. So I just add that to you since Larry contacted me earlier today.
And the standing seam
That's
roof, that's exactly what's required in the historic district and in the overlay zone, right?
Yeah, yeah. And the only difference is this one, it's really hard to get crimped standing seam anymore. That's the really historic one as this one has, but the standing seam that they propose is the same that we allow in the OH district, the entrance corridor for historic structures. So it'd be replicating the same things.
Well, and it, standing seam with no striations
Yeah, true
in
standing seam.
between.
Yeah,
True standing seam.
which that is what that is on the front. There's no
Correct.
striations in it, so. Yeah, the applicant indicated it would match existing. So
Okay.
there's no striations in any of that.
Okay.
Any questions for Gabe? If not, does the applicant wish to address us? You can, or you don't, you can't, you don't have to, or.
I'll be happy to. I'm Larry Jones and live at 24308 Walden Road in Abington. And we just purchased the building 4 months ago, I guess. Like Gabe said, I contacted him today. We had just put on our application to do the front of the building, and then when we were talking to the company to do the standing seam, I thought, well, we should do the ones on the back as well. And to be honest, I wasn't sure that the back of the building was even in the entrance corridor, so I thought I better be safe than sorry. So it's really just painting it and adding the standing seam awnings.
Questions from Mr. Jones? Looks to me like this is an improvement over the property as it sits today. If no questions, is there, what's the pleasure of the commission? Is there a motion?
I will make a motion that we approve the COA as submitted with the caveat, just like we talked about, standing seam with no striations to replace that. But no, thank you. It's a historic building. It's Sturkey Furniture Company. Charlie Sweet, I actually worked for growing up, moving furniture. No, that's very pleased to see some improvements.
Okay, well, you're welcome to come by and check it out.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Okay.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? If not, if you could call the roll.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Weaver?
Aye.
Mr. Pennington?
Aye.
Mr. Sproles?
Aye.
And Mr. Schuman?
Aye. Thank you.
One of the things we need to
The next order of business is Virginia Highlands Community College, 100 VHCC Drive, Abingdon, Virginia 24210, special use permit for signage located near the intersection of Jonesboro Road and VHCC Drive, specifically in the town of Abingdon right-of-way at the entrance to Virginia Highlands Community College on VHCC Drive, Abingdon, Virginia. Staff report.
Okay, so the Commonwealth of Virginia, Virginia Community College System, and Virginia Highlands Community College, Southwest Virginia Higher Education Center as the applicants is requesting a approval for a special use permit for a comprehensive sign plan. And you all have seen quite a few comprehensive sign plans in the last few months. It seems to be the new thing to do, especially if you have multiple tenants and multiple people in one area. And so there's a before picture and an after picture here. A comprehensive sign plan is allowed if approved by the town council as a special use permit, and this comprehensive sign plan will also take into account Virginia Highlands Small Business Incubator, the Washington County Government Center, and the Southwest Higher Education Center on the sign. So this existing sign is undergoing a renovation, and it's located at the intersection of Jonesboro Road and VHCC Drive in the town of Abingdon right-of-way. So just when we're looking at special use permits in general, for signs, so comprehensive sign plan can be used in situations when the applicants are looking for flexibility. So that's what they're looking for here. The only standard that's not allowed to be flexible is the height. But in this situation, the existing sign isn't proposed to be taller. So the height of the sign is not being changed, so you all aren't looking at that. The flexibility right now is the total size, the setback, and the changeable square footage. So the minimum setback is 8-4-5. So the setback is supposed to be the right-of-way, unless otherwise specified, is half the height of the sign. So this is just sitting smack dab in the middle of the road, as we all know, because we've all seen the sign quite a bit. So in general, what they're asking for here with this comprehensive sign plan is flexibility to increase the sign square footage located inside that setback. So that already exists. Much like the height, it's not changing. However, because they're adding more signage to this square footage of signage, that is one piece that they're asking for flexibility. When we look at illumination, the new sign will include a 4G cellular connectivity, which means that they do have the ability to, change the sign from day to night and, the different images that are on there. It is not going over the requirements of the illumination that you have in your zoning ordinance. The second piece that they're looking for flexibility is with the changeable message. So the current, our current changeable message information is, we added last year when we had a billboard that wanted to come in. I think you all remember that. And so we added some language that's really specific to how large your changeable message area can be. So the electronic messaging display will be removed. So you can see this to the left in the image. And it will be replaced with a new double-sided 7-foot by 12-foot electronic display, or 84 square feet. So the comprehensive sign plan is asking for flexibility to change static signage into additional changeable signage. So the two things so far that I have said is they're looking for setback flexibility, and they're looking for static to changeable. The final one that they're looking for is that the existing sign cabinets, they're all going to be removed, and they're going to be replaced with 4 single-sided 3x14 aluminum cabinets. So that's 168 square feet. 2 single-sided 8x10 aluminum cabinets. That's 160 square feet. So the comprehensive sign plan is asking for flexibility from what your underlying zoning of 60 total square feet to a total of 412 square feet. So that's the difference of what you're looking at. Now, obviously, a lot of the signage is already there, so they're looking to improve the signage. What they are also looking to do is currently the sign is brick with basically a concrete base, and they are looking to refinish it with 2 colors: Downing Sand, which is the lighter color here in the image and is also in your packet, and then Downing Earth, which is the darker base color. So your role tonight is to recommend either approval, denial, or continuance. And that, if you recommend approval or denial, that either one of those would go to the town council for their final approval in November. So the applicant is here to add anything else to the application that I may not have mentioned.
Thank you. I'm Adam Hutchison. I reside at 19435 Rich Valley Road in Abingdon. I also happen to work at Virginia Highlands Community College, and I'd first like to express my appreciation to Ms. Rice. She and her team have been very helpful in guiding us through this process. When the sign was built 23 years ago, it went through a state architectural review board process, which was a different process for us, so we had to go back and do some homework, and frankly, it's taken us about 1.5 years to dig through the archives in Richmond to figure out how we got to our current state. But the short story in from our view is the current sign is both technologically outdated, it does not work properly, it is not easily maintained. The company that built that electronic sign no longer exists. The software takes us, for example, to select the images, you have to select it effectively light bulb by light bulb to get the sign to make its messaging proper. The other issue for us is the design of the sign in its current brick and concrete structure, frankly, is it does not look good, nor is it easily maintained. So the refreshment of the new stucco and paint work will allow us to maintain it in a way that we think reflects well on both the college, the higher ed center, the incubator, the government center, and then the town of Abingdon. But I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about the sign or its proposed project.
Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Since this is a special use permit, it does require a public hearing, so I'm going to open the public hearing. I can look out and see that there's nobody here other than the people who've spoken, so I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing and then see if there's any discussion. One thing I would say is that, in my mind, the sign increases safety because it's so much easier to read than the current sign. And if you're looking for any one of those 4 areas or entities, you can certainly see it much more clearly on this sign than you can on the one that exists now. And I think that, to me, is an improvement.
And some of the existing requirements, like the message shall not change more than every 12 seconds, those are all items that are already in the code. So, they would need to adhere to those as well, outside of a motion tonight.
Seems to me that there was an effort to try to get Heartwood to be a part of this sign, and the fellow who was heading that up didn't want to, so he put his own little tacky sign out there. I'd like to see that go away. Is there any way we could incorporate the Southwest Virginia Cultural Center and Marketplace sign?
We would be happy to entertain another sign on there, but respectfully, it's not entirely our call. I mean, I think that sign, as I understand it, sits in the VDOT right-of-way. That's not my, I guess, Mr. Weaver, to answer your question, we'd be happy to add another appropriate sign to the structure if that's the pleasure of that organization and the intent of the town. There's capacity to do that.
So we are working on a master sign plan for the town right now with a subcommittee, looking at signage basically from the interstate all the way down to pedestrian signage in downtown. So that was also brought up in that subcommittee meeting. If I understand the history of how that sign got there, it seems that it was a bit unusual. So, but we've been asked whether or not we could remove it as well through this process. So we are looking at that. I don't have any information tonight, though.
I think this looks nice and will be an improvement in my opinion, but I would like to see the other go away.
The only question I have is really relative to the square footage.
Mm-hmm.
And it appears the columns are not changing. that correct?
That's correct. The structure itself does not change.
And you have existing signage in between the two columns, so the delta, so to speak, that we're talking about, the proposed signage on each of the exterior columns extends beyond the interior width of the columns.
That's
Is that
correct.
Okay.
If I may, Mr. Johnson, I apologize. Part of that is the economics of mounting the new signs. I mean, certainly there's a benefit from the visibility standpoint that we appreciate. The signs are currently mounted with steel brackets in between the columns. Those brackets are not structurally sound to mount new signs on. We'd have to go back and reconfigure the interior post. Frankly, it's easier to put new signage against the post instead of hanging it between the posts because of the nature of the current mounting bracket.
So these signs that are gonna be back to back are gonna actually have a couple of feet gap?
There's actually space in between them for the lighting mechanism,
Yeah.
but essentially the thickness of the post
Yeah.
is between the signs.
And so, yes, if they had just replaced the sign square footage, even if they had rearranged the signage but kept the square footage, they wouldn't be in front of you tonight. So it's the expansion of the sign that is the primary motion that you're making.
And from a visibility standpoint, one of the focuses that we had talked about was lumens, distractions. Doesn't appear to be any issues with that.
Not based on their, what they have submitted. So we have a 10,000 NITS or foot candles, and they have indicated that the brightness would be 8,000 NITS. I will say that if you wanted to discuss with the applicant a nighttime dimming or that type of thing and add it to your motion, this would be the time to ask for that.
There's nothing around there, I think, that would be of concern. You know,
Well,
there's no,
You got a stoplight there.
yeah, I'm talking about it in terms of there's no houses, there's no lighting issues with any of the neighbors, is what I'm getting at.
Correct. Yes, sir.
And there is a time that it can only switch from, you said it was 12,
Yes.
12 seconds?
Yes, so the illumination, so I'll just read the illumination directly into the record. Illumination shall be no greater than 10,000 NITS from sunrise to sunset and 700 NITS from sunset to sunrise. And it needs to be equipped with the automated brightness control, which they have indicated this sign does. And then as far as the changeable, a message shall not be changed more than once every 12 seconds. Move, flash, or display animation or as prohibited in this article. So, you know, it's supposed to be a static image. If there's fireworks going off, if there's dancing people, if they're advertising for Kroger's, those are not things that are allowed on the sign. You know, this has to be related to these businesses, and they need to be static images that change no quicker than 12 seconds in between. I mean, we do have code compliance, so if for some reason beyond the current administration, somebody in the future starts adding something different to the sign, we would be able to go through that process with code compliance. Normally, what I have seen in the past with signs of this nature is usually somebody comes and asks later, can they advertise Coca-Cola or, you know, something like that. So I don't think that's the purpose of the sign.
No, and if I may, the
but, yeah.
control of the messaging on the sign has always been held jointly by the Southwest Virginia Higher Education Center and Virginia Highlands. So it's all related to programming on those two entities.
Okay.
What's the pleasure of the commission?
I'll make a motion to approve COA as requested.
Okay, it's a special.
Or special use permit, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Special use permit as.
Is there a second?
I will.
Okay. Any additional discussion? If not, call the roll.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Weaver?
Aye.
Mr. Pennington?
Aye.
Mr. Sproles?
Aye.
And Mr. Schuman.
Aye.
And then this goes to town council on November 13th.
All right. The next order of business is the discussion of the zoning text amendment for window signage. And I think this is something we've talked about previously. And of course, what's in the packet is the overall sign ordinance, and in red is the changes for the window signs. So there's not that much verbiage that changes. One question I have is, assuming that we approve this, and then you have people who are out of compliance, is there a timetable in which they would have to come into compliance? How would that work?
No, so what I like to say is, in general, zoning is not retroactive. So if they have window signage right now, we would not be going out and trying to make them change. If a new business goes into a location that already has this type of signage, they would not be able to keep it. So as businesses come and go, that's when we would really be able to enforce the new
Okay, so
ordinance.
some of the people who have window signs right now, unless the business changed.
Correct.
What if the business didn't change, but they changed all the signage?
Then that also, they would, if they want to change the signage, then they would need to remove them. So yes, anything where there's a change would trigger them being in compliance.
Would you, for people who are out of compliance,
Mhm.
would you notify them of the changes?
Yes, yes.
All right.
We did that when we went through the process of having the recreational substances. We did notify all of those business owners at that time. So, in fact, after, I don't know if anybody, I think a few of you do have spend some time on Abingdon Community Connect, but there was a lot of language calling me out specifically with lovely quotes about what I had said. And in that case, we had several people calling saying, do I have to move out of town? And I said, no, zoning is not retroactive, but yes, if your business tried to move to a new location, you would then be required to comply with our standards. So the same things here. If you have existing window signage, it does not have to comply, but if you wish to change it, then you would need to comply, or if it was a new business.
I jumped ahead there a little bit. Do you have additional staff?
Yeah, I can
report?
just kind of explain it, just for the record, but, so we're saying that you can still have window signage on the interior for hours of operation. Because I think that, that's appropriate. Where this all stemmed from really was, we kind of started seeing vape shops and, shops with very bright lighted signs in their window. So lighted window signage, this applies to all window signage, whether located on the outside or inside of the window, except for hours of operation. So that would be prohibited. So you could have a lighted hours of operation, but you could not have lighted window signage. And then the other piece that we are looking at is basically saying where window signage is permitted, not permitted, and how much square footage. So right now, you could fill your entire window with signage, which a lot of people have, and what we're saying in the future, it would be 10% of your window. And so again, this really has stemmed from basically the abuse by, putting signage, advertising cigarettes and all of those things. And so you all said, yeah, we would like to take a look at that, and this is what we've provided. So there's not a whole lot of language. It's just square footage would be limited to 10% of the window, and you can't have lighted signs.
I guess there isn't really the applicant presentation. Questions for Ms. Rice?
Not that it really matters or factors in to our opinion, but as far as other historic localities, Lexington, Williamsburg, things of this nature, did they have any similar language that we
Yes.
may draw upon, or?
They do have similar language, and I think the HPR, we also added that window signage seen from a public right-of-way is not allowed without HPR approval. So it's even more limited in the historic district. So
Because-
we are limiting it kind of everywhere, and then there's another layer of review if it's in the historic district.
Okay. Okay.
All right, as this is a public hearing, I'm going to open the public hearing to see if there's anyone from the public. It does not appear that that's the case. So I'm going to close the public hearing. And then I'll see if there's any additional discussion from the planning commission. If there's not, is there a motion to approve the language as submitted.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any additional discussion? If not, would you call the roll?
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Weaver?
Aye.
Mr. Pennington?
Aye.
Mr. Sproles?
Aye.
And Mr. Schuman?
Aye. All right. Old business matters not on the agenda. I have something that, just quickly, when we met with the folks that were gonna redo the building beside Rain, and we ended up with what I thought was an agreeable compromise based on, the representative. And I found out later that, that the person who owned the building didn't approve of the compromise and ultimately sold the building. And the reason I bring that up is in that situation, and I would also note all of the time we spent on Doug's Car Wash. In both situations, staff spent time, a good bit of time, the commission spent time, and it was at least my understanding, and I can't speak for anybody else, but at least my understanding, that when somebody came as a representative, that they were truly a representative. And so, and the reason I mention that is, with the Doug's Car Wash, we went back and forth on a number of occasions, but the owner never came. In this situation, we had 2 different meetings and staff time, and we approved what I thought was a reasonable compromise at the time. But let's suppose that the applicant or the representative said it wasn't. We might have had additional discussion, but the point I want to make is when somebody comes here as the representative, I would like to think that they have the power to agree on behalf of their client, and for my purposes in the future, I may very well ask if they have that. But I think it's unfortunate in terms of staff time and in terms of our time, that if we assume that a representative actually has the ability or the authority to agree to what we've said or disagree, that doesn't mean we would change our position. I'm not saying that, but what I don't like is to spend that kind of time with the understanding that somebody has the authority when they clearly don't. Now, with Doug's Car Wash, they clearly didn't, and we kept going back and forth and approving things, and then what we approved they didn't like, and then they came back. In this situation, we had 2 different meetings, but at least it was my understanding when we finished that we had an agreement with the representative, and that representative had the authority to agree on behalf of the applicant. And I just make that point because I think in the future, I may very well ask that question, and I think it's appropriate.
I don't disagree, but also the applicant also has the right to come back in a subsequent hearing to ask for modifications of the COA. Like, we can agree saying, this side and that side. The applicant then can come back and then ask for a modification in it, an amendment or anything of that nature. So
Yeah, and absolutely they can do that. I think in some of these cases, what we have had is, in the case of both of these, 2 fairly substantial time spent with the commission and with staff. And, in the situation with the building next to Rain, the owner didn't come back, and I would have hoped he would have, but he didn't. And he ended up selling the building. And I guess, what I want to know is, because I think it's important for an applicant to understand that if they send a representative, that we're going to deal with the representative as if the representative is the person. I mean, they can come back, the representative can come back.
Yeah.
But I think at a point, it gets to be, sometimes it gets to be acrimonious when it shouldn't, or it just wastes staff time and our time. And what worries me a little bit too in that situation is, I hate to have somebody who is an applicant feel like they've been shortchanged when they didn't take the time to come to the meeting. And that sometimes reflects badly on us or on staff because there's a lack of understanding. And that, I just don't, that bothers me. I don't want that to be the case.
Well, I mean, there are two things, and we'll take this building right beside Rain. One is the COA goes with the property. So subsequent owner, if they undertake any renovations, anything of that nature, it has to be in compliance with the COA, which in this case, I think would probably be to their advantage. That was one of the properties that was actually incorporated into the historic district.
Right.
All right, so if they choose not to, if this goes 1 year without any activity whatsoever, if they choose not to, then that has to go to HPRB, and that is all original then. So.
Again, I'm not.
And the majority of folks, I think, that do appear before the commission are genuine, and we don't have any problems with. There are certain cases like you've stated.
Well, my only point in making that case is, I think there are times when it would be appropriate to say to the representative, or do you have the authority? We're like in that situation, there was a certain amount of negotiation going on. And once we had finished that, that's when to me, I felt like he had the authority to agree that what we had agreed to, and it's fine, they can buy that, they can use the COA, they might have to go back to the, to the Historic Preservation Board at some point if they don't do what that said. But again, my concern was, I hate to walk out of here with the idea that we have an agreement when we clearly didn't have an agreement based on the applicant. And I think a lot of the discussion with that and Gun Doug's Car Wash could have been limited had the applicant shown up.
And we went through this, the Historical Preservation Review Board went through this for over a year with the Summers Building.
Yeah.
It was something different every month. I know we agreed to this last month, but we want to do this.
Yeah.
And it finally got to the point to where we ended up with what I think is a very attractive building, but it took literally a year.
And also, didn't it change hands at one point?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's gonna happen. I just hope, like I say, I think, based on what I've seen there, I might at times ask a question when we're in that kind of a negotiation, do you have the authority to agree? And if the answer is no, I think that it might be appropriate to say, well, next month you should have the applicant come so we can make sure that we've had a clear discussion of all the issues. Again, I don't have any problem with what we approved. I mean, because it was my understanding that that there was an agreement, and I guess I was surprised to find out that not only was there not an agreement, but there was a certain amount of acrimony, which to me was unfortunate and could have been avoided.
Yeah.
I will tell you that when we have our meetings with the applicants, we do say we ask those questions. Do you want is the owner going to be there? We kind of go through all that process. Sometimes the owner doesn't want to be there because they just don't want to be seen, I guess. Like there's some people that want their representatives to take care of the project for them. And then sometimes it's just, I'll always say, who's your best talker? Who's going to come up here and speak about your project in a calm, way? Because I think that sometimes owners get also very emotional and they don't want to be here. And we've seen that on a couple of things too, where different people have
Yeah.
gotten a little over the top. It might have been the representatives, not the owners, I don't know. But so we see that. So we do, in our meetings, we do advise them to have the owner present. But again.
Yeah, and I think the thing is that they need to understand that if as a commission, if somebody comes and says they're a representative, at least I'm going to assume that they have the authority to be representative.
Correct.
And, again, in those two instances, the answer was that they didn't.
Right.
That's all. Make that point real quick. Any additional business to come before the commission? If not, is there a motion for adjournment?
Yes, sir.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in
My
favor
favorite
signify by
person.
saying aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.
Who bought